Her hands trembled as she pushed open the heavy glass door of the restaurant. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses hit her like a wave, and for a moment she almost turned back. She had never been inside a place like this before. The golden chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, the velvet curtains, the polished floor. It all looked like a world that didn't belong to her. Her shoes, worn from years of walking long distances, squeaked slightly on the glossy floor. She froze, hoping no one noticed, but a couple at a nearby table already turned and gave her a quick glance, then whispered something with a smirk. She pulled her old jacket tighter around her. It was the only decent thing she owned, but here, under the glow of those expensive lights, it looked shabby. Still, she held her head high. She had saved money for weeks, skipping meals, working extra hours, and finally, today, she had enough to buy one proper dinner. Not just any dinner, this was her mother's birthday, and she wanted to treat her to something beautiful, something her mother had never experienced in her entire life. Her mother sat beside her, wearing the softest smile. The older woman's hands were calloused from years of hard labor, and her dress was simple, faded, but clean. She looked around with childlike wonder, her eyes sparkling as if she had stepped into a palace. For her, this evening was magic already, even before the food arrived. They were guided to a small table in the corner. The waiter who led them there didn't hide the way his eyes quickly scanned their clothes, the way his lips twitched with judgment. But he said nothing, only placed the menus before them and walked away briskly. The girl tried to stay calm, but her chest felt heavy. Around her she could hear laughter and see shining jewelry, perfumes filling the air, men in suits, women in gowns. She could feel the invisible wall between her and them. And then, the whispers started. A group of young women at a table nearby glanced at her and giggled. One of them muttered loudly, "Did they get lost on the way to a street food stall?" Another man snorted, shaking his head as though their very presence was ruining his evening. Every laugh felt like a knife, every stare like a spotlight exposing her. She clenched her fists under the table. Her mother noticed and gently touched her hand, whispering, "Don't worry about them. Tonight is about us." The words should have soothed her, but they only deepened the ache inside. Why was kindness so expensive? Why did happiness feel like something they had to steal instead of something they deserved? The waiter returned, his expression flat, almost annoyed. He spoke quickly, as if he didn't want to waste his time with them. "What will you have?" he asked, not even looking at her mother. The girl carefully opened the menu. Her hands shook again. The prices were higher than she expected. Panic stirred inside her. What if she hadn't saved enough? She swallowed hard, pretending to read slowly while her mind raced. She couldn't let her mother see her worry. Not tonight. She finally pointed to the simplest dish she could find. Something just affordable if she calculated right. "We'll take 2 of these, please." The waiter raised his eyebrows. "Just that? Are you sure?" His tone carried that sharp edge of mockery, like he was saying, "People like you don't belong here." Her face burned. She wanted to disappear into the floor. She nodded quickly, and he scribbled it down before walking away without another word. Minutes passed. Around them, food arrived at other tables. Plates of colorful dishes, glasses of fine wine. Laughter grew louder. But their table remained empty. They waited, and the stares only grew harsher. Someone even muttered, "Maybe they should just eat outside." Tears stung her eyes, but she bit them back. She couldn't cry, not in front of her mother. She smiled instead, a fragile mask, and said, "The food will come soon, Mama. Don't worry." Her mother patted her hand, her smile unwavering. "I'm already happy, my dear. Just sitting here with you is more than enough." Finally, the waiter returned, but instead of food, he leaned down and whispered coldly, People are complaining. Maybe this isn't the right place for you. Her chest tightened. She felt her entire world collapse in that moment. All her efforts, all her savings, all her dreams for this one evening. It was all breaking apart. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She could only look at her mother, whose face had fallen, her smile fading, her eyes clouded with sadness. And then something unexpected happened. Another waiter, one who had been silently watching from the side, suddenly stepped forward. He was young, maybe in his 20s, with kind eyes that had seen enough of the world to understand pain. He approached their table and placed 2 glasses of water before them, his voice steady but warm. "I'll take care of them," he said firmly, glancing at the other waiter. The first waiter scoffed, muttering under his breath, but he walked away. The girl blinked, surprised. The young waiter smiled at her mother. "Happy birthday, ma'am. I'll bring something special for you both. Don't worry about the rest." Her mother's eyes widened. She looked like she might cry, but instead she pressed her hand to her chest and whispered, "Thank you, son." The girl felt a lump in her throat. No one had ever stood up for them like that before. No one had dared to push back against the judgment of the world for their sake. The young waiter disappeared into the kitchen. Moments later, he returned with steaming plates, dishes that looked far more expensive than what she had ordered. He set them down gently, almost ceremoniously, as though they were royalty. "This is on me," he said softly. "Please enjoy." The girl stared at the food, then at him, unable to speak. Her mother reached for the waiter's hand and whispered again, "Bless you, child." For a while, silence filled the table, not because of shame, but because of awe. They ate slowly, savoring every bite, tears sliding down the girl's cheeks. This wasn't just food. It was dignity. It was kindness. But kindness in such a place does not always go unnoticed. The other diners saw. Some frowned in disapproval. Others looked uncomfortable, as though the sight of generosity disturbed them more than the sight of poverty. And soon, whispers spread again, only this time, they were not whispers of mockery, but whispers of something else. Judgment aimed at the young waiter, who dared to break the invisible rules. The manager appeared, his expression stern, his steps heavy. He walked straight toward the table, his eyes fixed on the girl, her mother, and the young waiter standing beside them. The girl froze, her fork slipping from her hand. Her mother looked down, fear flickering in her eyes. The young waiter stood tall, though his hands tightened behind his back. And in that instant, the whole restaurant seemed to fall silent. The manager's shoes clicked sharply against the polished floor as he stopped at their table. His voice was cold, meant to be heard by everyone around. "What's going on here?" he demanded. His eyes flicked to the young waiter, then to the 2 women sitting quietly, as if their very presence was an offense. The girl's stomach knotted. She wanted to sink into her chair, vanish from sight, but the young waiter didn't flinch. He stepped slightly forward, shielding the women with his body. "They are my guests," he said calmly, his voice steady, "and I will serve them." A hush spread through the room. The other diners leaned in, eager for drama. Some wore smirks, as if they were watching a show. Others shook their heads, whispering things like, "He'll lose his job for this." The manager's face darkened. "Your guests," he repeated, almost mocking. "Do you understand the image this place has to uphold? We cannot allow." His words cut off when the girl's mother, her voice trembling yet clear, finally spoke. "Sir," she said softly, "we did not come to cause trouble. My daughter wanted to give me a birthday dinner. That's all. If we do not belong here, we can leave." Her words were humble, almost apologetic, and yet they carried the weight of years of quiet suffering. A heavy silence followed. The girl felt her chest crack open at the sight of her mother lowering her head, as though she was asking forgiveness for daring to dream. Before the manager could respond, the young waiter turned to him with fire in his eyes. "With respect, sir, kindness does not ruin the image of a restaurant. Cruelty does." Gasps rippled through the room. Someone even dropped their fork. No one ever spoke to the manager like that. The girl's breath caught. This man, this stranger, was risking everything for them. The manager's jaw tightened. "Enough. Step into my office. Now." The young waiter glanced back at the girl and her mother. His smile was gentle, reassuring. "Finish your meal," he whispered. Then he followed the manager out, his shoulders straight. The girl stared after him, her heart pounding. She wanted to run, to stop him, to tell him not to risk it all. But her mother placed a hand over hers. Sometimes her mother whispered, tears in her eyes. One act of courage is greater than a lifetime of silence. They ate the food in silence, though every bite was heavy with worry. The girl's mind raced with questions. Would he be fired? Would he lose his future just because he stood up for them? Minutes passed like hours. The restaurant buzzed again, the drama fading for the guests. But not for her. To them, it was just gossip. To her, it was life. Finally, the kitchen doors swung open. The manager emerged first, his face like stone. The young waiter followed behind, his expression unreadable. The girl's chest tightened as they approached. The manager stopped at their table again. For a moment, the girl thought he would order them to leave, shame them in front of everyone. But instead, he cleared his throat and said, "Enjoy your meal." Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Confusion swirled inside her. What had just happened? The young waiter leaned closer, speaking low so only they could hear. "I told him the truth. I told him I'd rather lose my job than watch good people be humiliated for no reason." He wasn't happy, but he smiled faintly. Sometimes honesty disarms even the strongest walls. Her mother clasped his hand with both of hers, her eyes wet with gratitude. "You're a rare soul, son," she whispered. The girl wanted to say something, anything, but her throat closed up. All she could do was look at him with wide eyes that spoke the words she couldn't find. The rest of the evening passed like a dream. They finished their meal, and when they stood to leave, the young waiter stopped them again. He handed the girl a small folded paper. "For you," he said quietly. She opened it once they stepped outside, into the cool night air. Inside were only a few words, written in hurried handwriting, "Never be ashamed of where you come from." The world changes when someone dares to believe in their own worth. The girl pressed the paper to her chest. For the first time that night, she didn't feel small. She felt seen. She felt human. Days turned into weeks, but she couldn't forget that night. She carried the note everywhere, tucked safely in her pocket, reading it whenever the weight of life grew too heavy. But one afternoon, as she passed by the same restaurant, she noticed something. The young waiter was outside, carrying boxes. At first her heart sank. Had he been fired after all? She rushed to him. "Did they let you go?" she asked, panic in her voice. He looked up, surprised but glad to see her, and then he laughed, a sound full of light. "No," he said, shaking his head. "I left. I found something better. I'm opening a small cafe, a place where everyone belongs, no matter what they wear or how much money they have. A place where kindness is the menu." Her eyes widened, her heart swelling with pride. "That's incredible." He smiled at her. That same gentle smile from the night they first met. "That night with you and your mother reminded me of why I chose this job in the first place. It wasn't for money or status. It was for people, for dignity, for moments that matter." Her eyes filled again, but this time they were tears of joy. She reached out, gripping his hand tightly. The world needs people like you. And as she walked away that day, the note pressed close to her heart. She realized something she had never fully understood until now. Kindness is not weakness. It is strength. Strength enough to silence cruelty. Strength enough to change a life. The memory of that evening at the restaurant never left her. Whenever she doubted herself, she remembered her mother's smile, the courage of the young waiter, and the warmth of food that had tasted not of luxury but of love. And she promised herself that one day she would pass that kindness forward to someone else who needed it as desperately as she once had. Because one act of bravery, no matter how small, can ripple through lives in ways the world may never see, but hearts will never forget. In the end, the story was never about the chandeliers or the polished floors or the judgmental stares. It was about a girl who dared to dream, a mother who cherished the simplest joy, and a stranger who chose compassion over fear. And sometimes that is all it takes to remind us that humanity still shines brightest when the world tries to make it dark.